Hello, I'm Howard Green. Well, after months of sniping, the rail yard scrap is coming to a head. Tomorrow, CP Rail will hold its annual meeting in Calgary. High noon in the proxy battle between the company and an activist investor who wants to replace seven of the railway's directors and its CEO. The volley of words from CP and Bill Ackman's Pershing Square has been overwhelming, with the railway urging investors to vote for its nominees using the white proxy, and Ackman asking investors to vote for his candidates using the blue one. It could take several days for the results to be released, and if the tally is close, it could raise questions about the system used to collect and count shareholder ballots. It's enough to make your head spin, and in a few minutes we'll look at whether big Canadian companies will have to recalibrate in light of external challenges from the likes of Bill Ackman. But first, we'll tackle the ins and outs of Canada's shareholder voting system, and we're joined by Brad Allen, Senior VP at shareholder communications firm Laurel Hill. Good to have you with us, Brad.
Thanks, Howard. Good to be here.
Thanks for coming in. So I gather in your office you call this a gong show.
Well, amongst ourselves, it's I think that's more from the mechanics perspective. It's going to be very interesting tomorrow. All driven by from when we first saw the circular come up from CP, and they talked about the fact that there was not going to be a proxy cutoff. And typically in Canada, you'll have a 48-hour proxy cutoff. That's almost invariably always what companies have in there under their regulations.
So you can count the votes and release them at the meeting. So you can count the votes and release them at the meeting, and also have a little bit of management has a little bit of a heads up as to what to expect, and has some tactical time to try and change things, and then maybe waive the cutoff. By coming out of the gate, waiving the cutoff, from my perspective, I think it puts CP sort of in a bit of a box, because they, in my mind, set themselves up to have to wait to the last minute to see what the dissident, what Bill Ackman's going to have as far as his vote count, and that's going to likely delay the tabulation tomorrow. So how long could it be delayed? We have a holiday on Monday, Victoria Day.
Right, yeah, famous Canadian holiday. That's a hard call, really, Howard, because we haven't seen a situation like this. I mean, typically you would get the vote count at the meeting. It's very rare that there's a potential that you need to adjourn the meeting to be able to do a tally. It seems like it's inevitable, I should say, that there will need to be an adjournment here, and that raises other potential questions. The length of the adjournment, and I've heard people say it could be a week.
A week?
Yeah, I've heard that. I mean, that seems right at the far end, but you know, if it's a couple of days, any delay is going to be untenable for shareholders and for the two parties.
How come the country can hold a general election and the results are out at 8 or 8:30 at night on the same day, and you're dealing with tens of millions of people?
I don't know. Maybe we got a dangling Chad issue here. I'm not sure, but I don't disagree, and that's part of the reason why I think you will see a lot more people, depending on how it does proceed. Sorry, with on the mechanical side tomorrow. There may be a lot more spotlight on the proxy voting process and the intricacies that are sort of involved, because there's multiple handoffs, multiple intermediaries that cause some of the confusion and issue and lack of transparency overall.
What about the slates of directors or the individual directors? You don't have to vote for everybody. You can vote for some and not for others. How much does that complicate it?
Well, it probably caused some of the intermediaries some challenges just in structuring the proxy, because again, it's not typical to see a proxy laid out that way. And this universal proxy that CP utilized, whereby a shareholder can use their, and also offered by Ackman, can use one proxy to nominate either management and activist shareholder nominees. Don't typically see that. That in itself gives a little bit of a challenge. The other challenge, Howard, is the proxy voting system is premised on it's actually the last vote that comes in that matters from a shareholder. So as we sometimes like to say, it's vote early, vote often, but it's the last one that counts. So that's why you saw both sides stressing to use their proxy, and it revocates any previous proxy.
Vote often? You mean you
can vote more than once,
stuff
Howard.
the ballot box?
You can vote as often as you want, but it's the last one that counts.
So they keep track of your previous votes and then nullify them? Keep you. How do you know that the process has integrity?
Well, now you know what, it may take a little while to tabulate the proxies. I mean, the tabulator, and I would not want to be the tabulator tomorrow, has to take not only management's proxies, which ostensibly they would have seen all along. They would not have seen the dissident proxies, so they're going to all get those number of dissident proxies coming in. They're going to not only have to validate the proxy, they're going to have to validate to see whether or not one that voted on the blue proxy supersedes the one, if they had one, on the white proxy, because that happens too.
A lot of people make mistakes. They keep putting white in big caps and blue in big caps. People make mistakes.
People make mistakes, and we've seen all of the mistakes that get made, and that's part of the overall proxy plumbing, that when you have firms like ourselves, we're there to try and make sure we see what the mistakes are, we know where there may be issues, and try and guide the clients. So there's definitely propensity for issues here. And if the vote's close, I think it'll be very interesting to see whether or not either side goes to legal lengths to get a vote recount. There's never really been a formal audit, third-party audit of proxy voting results, to my knowledge. So I don't know if this is going to be a close vote, to be honest, Howard, but if it was, then that'd be another layer on here.
Not much time left. I want to get in a couple of quick ones. CP says vote for the best 16 directors to serve shareholders' best interests. So they're opening the door to, voting for Ackman's slate.
I thought so too. I thought the last press release was very interesting. Maybe I would say a little bit weak, because it seemed to say, okay, we know there's going to be nominees from Ackman's going to get voted on. Pick the best 16, whereas we know Bill's said all along, just vote my guys, don't vote any of their guys. So not really sure what that does for CP.
One more to ask you, some confusion. Can short sellers, those who have shorted CP, can they vote too? Do they get a ballot? Because presumably they don't have an economic interest if they've shorted. Well,
that's the whole empty voting issue, another episode that we can talk about. But basically, there's anyone that holds shares as a record date has the ability to vote. The challenge is where you sometimes have overvoting or empty voting is, again, trying to track down, and similar to TELUS, where it was definitely considered with, I believe, Mason Capital on the short selling side, and still been able to utilize their vote was an issue. So there is that potential as well. Like I say, we'll see what comes tomorrow, but it may drag on for a few days.
All right, Brad, thanks a lot for coming in.
Thanks a lot, Howard.
Brad Allen of Laurel Hill Advisory Group. Coming